Europe was on fire. Kings were falling. Empires were shaking. And in the middle of chaos, one man saw opportunity. He was not born into power. He was not meant to rule. But he believed something dangerous, that destiny could be taken. His name was Napoleon Bonaparte, and for a moment in history, he came closer than anyone to controlling all of Europe. Napoleon was born in 1769 on the island of Corsica. It had only recently become part of France. To the French elite, he was not one of them. He was an outsider. When he arrived at military school in mainland France, he was mocked for his accent, ignored for his background. He was quiet, cold, obsessed with one thing: power. While others socialized, Napoleon read history, philosophy, war strategy. He studied men like Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar, not to admire them, but to surpass them. Then history gave him a chance. In 1789, France exploded into chaos. French Revolution. The monarchy collapsed. The king was executed. Power was no longer inherited. It was up for grabs. France needed generals. France needed order. Napoleon stepped forward, not because he was chosen, but because no one else could do what he did. In 1793, at the siege of Toulon, Napoleon made his move. He wasn't the highest-ranking officer, but he saw what others didn't. He repositioned the artillery, changed the entire battle plan, and won. It was fast, it was decisive, it was brilliant. For the first time, people noticed his name, not as a student, not as an outsider, but as a force. Napoleon rose quickly, too quickly. By his mid-20s, he was already a general. And then came Italy. The French army there was weak, hungry, poorly equipped. But Napoleon told them, "You are naked and ill-fed, but I will lead you into the most fertile plains in the world." And he did. He moved faster than his enemies. He attacked where they were weakest. Battle after battle he won. Austria fell back. Northern Italy collapsed, and suddenly Europe realized something terrifying. This was not just a general. This was a man who could change history. By the late 1790s, Napoleon returned to France as a hero. Crowds cheered him. Politicians feared him. Because France was still unstable. The government was weak, corrupt, divided, and Napoleon knew it. He didn't ask for power, he took it. In 1799, he carried out a coup. No crown, no ceremony, just control. France was now his. He had no royal blood, no legal right to rule, and yet he now controlled one of the most powerful nations in the world. But Napoleon wasn't satisfied, because controlling France was only the beginning. Next, he would try to control all of Europe. By 1804, Napoleon Bonaparte was already the most powerful man in France. But power was not enough. He wanted something more permanent, something unquestionable, a crown. So a grand ceremony was prepared in Paris. Kings, nobles, and even the Pope, Pope Pius VII, were present. The world was watching. Traditionally, the Pope would crown the emperor, but Napoleon did something no one expected. He took the crown and placed it on his own head, slowly, deliberately, a message without words. I owe my power to no one. In that moment, the Republic was gone, an empire was born. Now crowned emperor, Napoleon turned his attention outward. Europe had formed alliances against him. They wanted to stop him before he became unstoppable. But they were too late. In 1805, Napoleon faced a massive combined army from Austria and Russia. The battle took place near a small town. Battle of Austerlitz. Outnumbered, surrounded, it should have been his defeat. Instead, it became his greatest victory. He tricked his enemies. He made them think he was weak. Then, at the perfect moment, he struck. The enemy army collapsed. In just one day, Napoleon destroyed one of the strongest coalitions in Europe. After Austerlitz, no one doubted him anymore. He wasn't just powerful, he was unstoppable. Victory followed victory. Austria defeated. Prussia crushed. One by one, the great powers of Europe fell. Napoleon redrew the map of the continent. Kings lost their thrones, new kingdoms were created, and many of them were ruled by his family. His brothers became kings, his allies became rulers. Europe was no longer a collection of independent nations. It was a system centered around one man, Napoleon. At his peak, he controlled or influenced almost all of Europe, from Spain to the borders of Russia. This was not just victory, this was domination. But empires don't fall in a day. They crack slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. Napoleon made one critical mistake. He believed he could control everything, including trade. He created a system to block Britain, his greatest enemy, from trading with Europe. But this hurt everyone. European economies suffered, smuggling increased, and resentment grew. Even his allies began to turn against him, among them Russia. At first, Russia cooperated, but over time they refused to follow Napoleon's rules. To Napoleon, this was not just disobedience, it was a challenge, and he never ignored a challenge. By 1812, Napoleon stood at the height of his power. No enemy had truly defeated him, no army could match him. And that was exactly the problem. Because when no one can stop you, you start believing you cannot be stopped. So he made a decision that would change everything. He would invade Russia. Not with a small force, but with the largest army Europe had ever seen. Over 600,000 soldiers from across the empire. Different languages, different nations, all marching under one command, his command. It looked unstoppable. It looked inevitable. It looked like the final step to complete domination of Europe. At this moment, Napoleon had everything: power, glory, control. But history has a pattern. The higher you rise, the harder you fall. And in the frozen lands of Russia, Napoleon was about to face something he had never truly fought before. Not an army, not a king, but nature itself. And this time, he would not win. In 1812, Napoleon Bonaparte marched into Russia with over 600,000 soldiers, the largest army Europe had ever seen. At first, everything seemed easy. The Russian army kept retreating. They avoided direct battle. Napoleon kept moving forward, deeper, further, into the vast emptiness. But something was wrong. The land was empty. No food, no supplies, no victory. The Russians were burning everything behind them, villages, crops, even their own cities. This was not a war of strength. This was a war of endurance. Finally, Napoleon reached Moscow. The great city stood before him, but when he entered, it was silent, empty, and then fire. Moscow began to burn, not by accident, but by design. The Russians had destroyed their own capital, so Napoleon could not use it. Napoleon had won, but gained nothing. No peace, no surrender, only ashes. And winter was coming. Then the cold arrived. Not normal cold, brutal, unforgiving. Temperatures dropped far below freezing. Soldiers froze to death. Horses collapsed. Food disappeared. The army began to break. Discipline turned into chaos. Men deserted. Others simply lay down in the snow and never stood up again. What was once the greatest army in Europe became a line of starving, freezing survivors. By the time they left Russia, only a fraction remained. The empire had not been defeated in battle. It had been destroyed by reality. Europe saw its chance. The myth of Napoleon was broken. The invincible emperor was no longer invincible. One by one, his enemies rose again. Austria, Prussia, Russia, Britain. They formed a new alliance, and this time they would not stop. In 1814, Paris fell. Napoleon was forced to give up his throne. The emperor was finished. He was sent away, far from power, far from war, to a small island, Elba. For the first time in years, Napoleon was alone. No army, no empire, just silence. It should have ended there, but it didn't. In 1815, Napoleon escaped. No army, no resources, just himself. He landed in France. Troops were sent to stop him. An entire army stood in his path. Napoleon walked forward, alone, and said, "If any of you will shoot your emperor, here I am." Silence. Then, one by one, the soldiers lowered their weapons and joined him. It was something no one could explain. In just days, he took back control of France. This brief return to power became known as the 100 Days. But Europe reacted immediately. They would not let history repeat itself. In June 1815, Napoleon faced his final battle, Battle of Waterloo. This time there were no tricks left, no miracles. The battle was brutal, confusion, mud, delays, and then reinforcements arrived for his enemies. Napoleon's army began to collapse. For the first time, he could not recover. He could not adapt. He could not win. This time, there would be no escape. Napoleon was sent to a remote island in the Atlantic, St. Helena. Far from everything. No army, no politics, no second chances. He spent the rest of his life there, remembering, explaining, defending his legacy, until, in 1821, he died, alone. Napoleon once controlled most of Europe. He defeated kings, redrew borders, changed history. But in the end, he lost everything. Not because he was weak, but because he believed he could not be defeated. He rose faster than anyone in history, and fell just as hard. This was the rise and fall of Napoleon Bonaparte.